Hey guys, so here is the completed half model of the wall sconce. I brought the UV texture editor window up here, and what I've gone ahead and done is this is sort of my finished, quote-unquote finished UV layout for all the parts and pieces. Here is the completed low poly with UV layout. If you notice, when I select everything, it will all pop up so you can see where things are mirrored, where things are overlapping, so that we'll have repeating UVs. So how do we get to this point? How do we get to the point where we have our UVs laid out with this? So here is my original scene, where after we've broken the model down into the sections we're going to repeat. I'm going to go ahead and we're just going to break these parts down into something that's a little bit like kind of level of difficulty. So I'll start with this back plate. It's just pretty well flat plane. Same with these two sconce pieces. They're fairly simple. We have the top piece, which is this nice cylinder, and the bottom piece, which is another cylinder. We'll tackle those kind of more towards the end. Same with these kind of these end pieces, these connector pieces. Now again, I'm keeping both of these connector pieces. Only reason is it's kind of a little experiment where I have a really reduced one here and then a little more detailed version here, just to see some differences in the way that they'll end up baking out. I really think if you can afford it, if you're not going to be close to your object, just having it reduced down to something like this will serve you pretty well. If you need the more detail, something like this would work. Then we have our side piece here, and then again just our basic blocks here and here. All right. Now this I still have this extra face right here, which what we'll end up doing is after we lay everything out, that can just be deleted. Not a big deal. So the first thing I want to do is we're going to just unwrap these with using basically the unwrap command and a couple of other kind of alignment stuff. Maya 2016 has added a whole new slew of features. They've added a whole new different icons. They've added some new techniques, some different tools that you can add. They've redone the way these menus work. On a couple of them I have a whole new bunch of tools, and they've actually moved some of the tools onto this menu versus where they used to be here. So it's the workflow from say Maya 2014 up to 2016, different tools, but it's the same basic process. If anything, it has gotten a little easier. So what I'm going to do is start with this back plate, which again I've removed the back of it, so it's really just a front face. And I'm going to UV, and I'm just going to create a planar map, but I'm going to hit the option button, and the reason is you can fit best plane, bounding box, project from different sides, and what I really want to do is hit apply and see how it looks. And so right here you can see it's fairly well flattened out. Main thing is my planar projection is projecting from the face of the object. Okay, the reason I brought the option box is in case I had hit the x-axis, I hit apply, and then we're looking at it from the side. We're not really wanting it from the side. It'll be a lot easier again along the z-axis. Hit apply, now we're facing it. So next thing I'm going to do is just go select these UVs, and this is the unfold selected. We also have it automatically for better texture space. This can be kind of useful. I think unfold's what I'm going to hit first. Screen comes back. Maya so broke, but hey, okay, it's everything's back and how it needs to be. So this is using the unfold, and what you can see here is our object's pretty well laid out. There might be a little extra stretching kind of going on, but overall not a bad projection of what we have. So now that we've laid it out, we can use these options right here to kind of check on some stuff. So right here we have display RGB. This is display alpha channel. Not going to do much for us right now. This here is our UV distortion. This is toggles for shaded UVs. Makes it a lot easier to see what we're doing. Also can tell whether our UVs are flipped or not. Pixel snap. This is very useful for snapping UVs to a texture if we had it to specific areas. This is our view grid on off. This one here is a texture border display, so you can see that it turns on to the borders of our shell. This one here is our display checkered tiles. So our distortion or checkered tiles will probably be the most helpful. So if we click on this button, you'll see that the way the object looks now is very, very bright. Let's turn the gamma off a minute so you can see this a little better. If we turn that off, you see this areas that in white are perfectly even on the mesh, meaning there's basically zero distortion. We have 1-to-1 pixel textile area versus UV area. Red usually means it's smaller, blue means it's a little too large. Usually if you have a bunch of pale shades, you're doing pretty well. White is perfect. Sometimes it's the unicorn. If we turn that off and we go to our checkered pattern, it allows us to look in our viewport and see what our distortion is going to be like on the model itself. And if you look, we have perfect checkers here, that nice white area before. Moving on, we have a little bit of distortion around the edges. Nothing too terrible. If this was going to have a lot of really mechanical detail on it, it might be something we'd want to refine along these edges here to make it so that they were really squared up. But I think, you know, for what we're going to be doing, baking textures and all that, this should work fairly well insofar as our checkered pattern. Just going to turn that off. Alright, so let's call this piece done. Move to the top piece, and again, UV, planar. Go ahead and hit the unfold button, and that'll give us something like this, which is pretty good, pretty close. Check it with the checkered pattern, and you can see that that's alright. Now one thing I'm going to do is, this is kind of distorted right here, and there's a few areas I think that would actually help our texturing if things were a little more even. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use these tools here, which are the align tools, in order to straighten out some of these edges. Alright, so what I'm going to do is come in with UV, grab the bottom here, and just hit the little button. Or you can go to edge, double click the edges here, and then kind of align like that. Or right click, not to vertex, to UV, flatten down like that, right? So all I'm doing here is just kind of re-paralleling a couple of these edges. Then I can come back in with the UV, take these guys here, and then re-hit the unfold, and it'll kind of stretch these out a little bit better. Let's see what this looks like now. So hit this, check our distortion, mostly all white, got a little red going on in here. Checker wise, looking pretty good. Something else that can happen is if we look at our checker here, you can see that that is getting unaligned. So if you look back along here, there's these edges where they're kind of distorted. We can do the same thing we did before. So go to UV, grab these guys here, let's align those up. Something sort of like that. Now let's see what happens if we do this. There we go. Yeah. Alright, so by unfolding just the small sections, notice I just had a selection and then I hit unfold. It kind of locks just the selection to be what gets unfolded. So it kind of pins everything else. Basically saying we like what we have going on here, but I'd like to try doing something a little different. and so it'll kind of unfold on up. So now if we look at object mode, turn our tiles back on, you can see we have our nice kind of squares. It's got a little distortion going through the middle there, but you can see especially on the outside here, it looks pretty good. Now we've created a situation where we've got a little bit more stretching around, and you can see that by turning that on. You can see the red and a little of the blue going on. What we can do here is go back to unfold and relax and kind of turn that off. So let's go to UV. So what I'm going to do is actually let's go to face. Take these inside faces here. Go Control to UV and then go ahead and hit unfold. And see how it stretched that down just a little bit? By doing that, it evened out all the inside. So we might have lost a little texture space on the inside face here, but we've also cleared up all the distortion right around the inside. So where that was pink, see, like this, by unfolding it, we get rid of the distortion. Okay, so now if we look at this with our checkerboard pattern, you can see that things are looking pretty snazzy. Alright, so turn that off. Let's come over here, grab this piece, do the same thing, UV, planar. Right, turn off our grid. And again, that should get us fairly close. Go ahead, hit the unfold button, and we now get this very squashed looking thing. If we turn on distortion, for the most part we're really good, except we have some going on in the shadows and everything of this. Let's turn off our shadowing for a minute, and you can really kind of see a little distortion here and there. Alright, so to clean this one up, what I'm going to do is just kind of start with that align tool. Sort of align some of these. The reason being is when you have an object like this, where again the unfold kind of wants to break your symmetry, kind of wants to rotate things. Sometimes it works a little easier when we're texturing if we can keep things horizontal and vertical, keep things one-to-one with our main face, and what that allows us to do really is to texture with a lot less distortion, especially if we were going to try to create text or any kind of drawing element on top of the object. Alright, so this is starting to get a little bent. What I'm wanting to do is let's try a little different technique here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take these edges, you see them where they're right around here, and I'm going to cut these. So go ahead and separate them on the selected edges. And what that did is, if I go to shell, is it made a separate shell for this inside piece. Okay, so it's going to be it's now disconnected from our outside part here, which is actually kind of what we're wanting. As a matter of fact, I'm going to go ahead to this edge here, here, and here, and just like boxes, like flaps on a box, I'm going to go ahead and hit my little knife tool and cut those as well. What that allows us to do is, if I go to UV and then do our unfold, is it lays out just like that. So notice how white everything just turned. So just like box flaps, this is now out. This is all to scale, zero distortion there. Okay, so now let's do the same thing here. So let's take this edge. So if we look, that folds back like a flap. So let's actually go and take, say, this edge, and these two here. Cut them. Something can be very helpful here is now turn on the border edge, so we can see it'll be bold where our lines are, and that'll help stretch that out. Take this edge and this edge, cut them, and then this edge and cut them. Again, kind of think of it as, you know, paper craft or a cardboard box or something along those lines, and slice areas where you would need to fold out flaps. So hit the unwrap button and you'll see how white everything suddenly got. Okay, yes, it's added seams, but now we have basically zero distortion on the model. This actually could work as far as our layout. It would just be a matter of, do you want the extra seam here or not? In the case of the way our model looks, turn this back on here, you can see that it would place a seam right on the outside here, and then it would also have one on these corners, which may show up or may not show up, just kind of depending. That might be something that we would have to doctor later. Generally, what I would do in this case is, if we take this edge, go and hit the move and sew button and just kind of sew these back together. And what that'll prevent is a seam from happening. However, there won't be a seam, but there will be extra distortion. So you can see how the shape there kind of changes. If you want to, this is the unwrap tool. I could actually come in here and very carefully brush over on that to maybe get a little less distortion. But see, as you see, as I mess with it, it's going to start changing the shape and cause all sorts of odd things to happen. So I think I'm just going to leave that how it is. This is such a small area that I don't think it would be, having a little extra room there wouldn't be a Now, that being said, what I might want to do is, because there's like basically a 90-degree angle in here from where the inside light face matches up against the inset, I think I would rather have this line on the outside be clean and this line on the inside, where, you know, grime or shadow or ambient occlusion map anyway is going to start shading things. What I'm going to do is take this edge here, select these guys, cut them, and then come back to our edge on the outside and hit the move and sew. And so grab these 2, 3, 4 edges, move and sew, bottom edge, move and sew. Whoa, see, apparently that one's not detached yet. So take these, move and sew. Oh, okay, well, there's our culprit. There you go. Cut that. All right, this, move and sew. These, move and sew. All right, so now this is separated, and then we have these edges here. Weld these bits together. And now again, there's distortion. You're going to have it in this case. Let's just go to UV, and because there's nothing in the middle, what I'm going to do is select all these inside faces right along that border, and then let's hit the unfold and see what happens. Might need to pin some more stuff. Alright, so what I'm going to do, because I have some distortion here, is let's go to edge mode, and I'm just going to select our UV mode, and I want to make sure I've selected all these great UVs here. Let me turn that off so see what I'm doing. So I have all these points here. I'm going to do a shift select, which is going to select the inverse. So as you can see, it's selected the entire object or shell here, except for the inside faces along that ring. Got a polygon, so I'm going to pin the selection, which turns everything blue. What that also means is that it will not move those UVs. Come back, do a shift selection again, which selects that inner ring, and then hit the unfold. And as you can see, that stretched those back out, and that's what we were kind of looking for. Now, if I really want to get a little pickier, I can just kind of align these guys back up so they're nice and even, symmetrical as it were. Alright, so now go back, UV, polygons, unpin all, and now if we check our distortion, the whole outside is nice and even, the inside's looking a little pinkish. Might be able to just fix that by doing this, a little R. There we go. Because it's trying to fit that inside there. So if we make that a little bit bigger, slightly blued, but at the same time you can see that that's working pretty well. Anything else would just be sort of fine tuning. Let's see if I can take these guys, a little less distortion there, these guys, a little less distortion there, these guys pull it up, pull it in. Alright, so what does this look like with cubes on? If we look at the outside, these main faces, these key faces are on the outside, nice and square. Bevel, if our bevel here on this edge, if we look, the squares, while if we look at just that edge, come off at an angle, but if you look the way the blend is completely across here, these rows of cubes are heading directly off, which is great. That's what we really want. This face here on the inside, as it's looking right at the camera, you can see that the rows are nice and even, perfectly square. Same thing down here, we have rows going right across, so when we end up baking this, all that texture will look real nice. Even though we're not going to need this face up top, all this transition heading back is pretty good. If anything, you would just need to move this just a little bit to fix the distortion on it, so that's a little nicer. All right, so right now we have done pretty well all the easiest parts. Oh, one last piece, this guy here. Oh, I've pretty well already laid it out. It simply put was just again, UV, do our planar. Again, if it doesn't turn out right, see how narrow that looks. What we want to do is UV planar, change it from the z-axis to the x-axis, hit apply, and then just go ahead and do an unfold, and that should get us about what we're looking for. In this case, it's giving a little bit of distortion. But I think that has more to do with scale than it has to do with distortion. So perfectly white, hit our checker pattern, everything seems like it's flowing fairly well, and that's good enough for at least a good start. They might can tweak a little bit down in here, but overall I think that's about perfect. So after this, now we have more of these bit parts, and they're going to be more cylindrical shapes, so we'll do those next.